We're good to go. We are here representing Black Men Read.
That's right.
My name is Lance Adams.
Demetrius Frazier.
And thank you for joining us. For everybody that's watching, we are here to review May's Book of the Month, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. So, New York Times bestseller.
Yes, and deservedly so.
Deservedly so. One of the more powerful books that I've read, and we are going to recap the book, and more important than that, we're going to take some highlights and we're going to wrap it up with how can we do better.
That's right.
Going forward.
We always try to come up with some ideas and we can get involved, we can do some things to make things better, to address the situation that the book tried to go for. Before we do that,
yes,
can we do some shout outs?
Yes, we'll definitely do some shout outs.
Right. You are Aggie Pride all the way.
If you're not familiar, North Carolina A&T, Greensboro, North Carolina, Aggie Pride, class of 06.
Second best black college on the East Coast, Virginia University. I would like to shout out my sister. She's got a new brand, anonymousthebrand.com. This is her shirt. Of course, it's a lovely shirt. We also have still some copies of last month's book. If you did not get a copy, did not read it, hit us up on the page. We can get you a copy. At this point, we'll bring it to your house for free if you want. I think we got a lot to talk about. So
I think we have a whole lot to talk about. We have some big topics. Which topic do we want to discuss first?
I just want to start with overall comments about the book. How did you feel? What did you think of the book? When you were going through the pages, I know for me, how I felt. And I just want to hear what you had to think about it.
So, first impression with the book, same as with the last book that we read, there is a lot of anger. There's a lot of anger. And there's a lot, but there's at the same time, there's a lot of knowledge. So there's a lot in the book where there's things that you think about, right? So I've been fortunate enough that, not in my immediate family, I don't have anybody that's been to prison, and I feel like I am in the vast minority. But when I read this, so a lot of it was newer to me because it's outside of the scope of my everyday life. So reading the book and going through the history of how we've gotten here, and it's not by mistake.
Right.
I think that's one of the biggest things, is not by mistake. And when you read the book, you see that it is purposely laid out, plotted out, beginning to end, to get us to the place where we are, where it's just a vast majority of African Americans are in prison and in jail for longer periods of time.
Right. And
then they're not the rehabilitation that jail is designed to be, or we believed or hoped that, even if hope is the wrong word to use in that situation, it's not the case at all. Because when you come out and you're supposed to be able to reassimilate back into the community, back with your family,
right,
and be a better citizen of America, and the reality is that's a lie.
That's right.
What did you think?
I think personally for me, I do know some people who have been through the prison system, and I think the frustration I felt and the anger I felt was on a personal level. It was anger that I didn't know all of what this book told me about how their lives are after they get released, or even how they got there in the first place. There's so much knowledge that is put in this book, and I'm sure there's way more to add to it. There's way more research needs to be done, but it's just so much that we can learn from their lives, that once they step out of those prison walls, it's not over.
No.
It's actually, in some cases, worse than when they went in, even if they were in poverty before. So I think that's a lot of things that we're going to talk about going forward. But I think if anyone reads this book and they didn't have an understanding of what a felon or a criminal or someone who has been wrapped up in the correctional system, they will get their eyes wide open after reading this book, and then also either frustrated about where they stand, about what they know, or frustrated to the point of anger about the system in itself. So I think it's and there's a lot of themes that she pulled out in the book itself. There's a couple that I wanted to talk about specifically, and then we can just kind of go from there.
And I can tell you, if you, me and Demetrius both, reading this book, my copy is, there are highlights everywhere.
Highlights,
there was
post-it notes.
Research that went online after it. I have a book right here of notes and bullet points and things from it. So it's not one of those books that you read like a novel. I mean, it teaches you, and you're going to want to learn more. And I think that's one of the best things about the book is you're going to want to know more. And we've got some topics here specifically that we want to discuss. Obviously, anybody watching, any comments, any questions, we will address them. Just type it on in. We'll address them as they come up. But let's go to the first topic. All
right. The first topic is actually one of the basic premises of the book. It talks about colorblindness. Okay. The author put it this way. He said the concept of colorblindness is really a double-edged sword. It gives the utopian aspiration of this optimistic part of us. We think that, hey, we got a black president.
There you go. Everything's fixed.
We've got some progress. Everything's done now, right? Everything's perfect. And because now we start using the terms that the legal system is colorblind, our systems and processes are colorblind, it actually has a cutting part of it where it says it actually gives cover for racism.
Yep.
So I'm not discriminating against you because you're black. I'm discriminating against you because you're a criminal.
You're a felon.
You're a felon.
That's the reason.
You are less than. And I had to wrap my mind around the term criminal because, you know, she gave parallels to Jim Crow. She gave parallels to slavery, and I was trying to put myself in a white person's shoes.
Yeah.
So if I was a white person, let's say I'm a decent Caucasian, and I was dealing with the idea of slavery. At some point in your mind, you have to think that a human is a human, right? So why would I treat them less than? And maybe you reconcile that, and now you think slavery's bad. Jim Crow's the same way. It was actually targeted towards separating the races.
Didn't want poor whites and blacks to be together.
You didn't want it together.
Gotta break them up.
In your mind, you reconcile, that's not exactly what I want from you. But the word criminal, because we have always put a dark cloud over a criminal because they're an outcast, they've done something wrong, they're murderers, they're drug dealers. The criminal title is hard to kind of reconcile because who likes criminals?
Nobody likes criminals, right?
No one likes criminals except for in the movies, right? They get movies named after them. They Bonnie and Clyde, Thelma and Louise. Those are nice things to look at. They're funny sometimes, but we can all rally around crime. We don't want crime in our neighborhoods. We don't want criminals. And so if you can master a way to get, and this is where she gets to, if you can master a way to get criminal synonymous with people of color, then you can get a rally base, you can get a unified base against people of color.
And it's even going to be easier to get people of color on board with it as well.
That's right, because those poverty-stricken neighborhoods are the ones that are the victims in most cases of high crime, the drugs, the gang violence, all those things. And when you say, hey, we're getting tough on crime, yes, why wouldn't I want that? Who doesn't want lower crime in their neighborhoods?
I want to feel safe.
I want to feel safe. So when they say we're getting tough on crime, we're going to enforce the laws, it is very seductive to get behind that type of rhetoric.
And it's very specific end goal in mind with it, which is what the book is all about.
That's right. And so I think some of the points that she brought out was about using crime and criminals and getting rid of those specifically. But using it in an orchestrated way, and we'll get to that too, how big and orchestrated this system really is. It's not one law we just go fix and all of a sudden everything's right? But it's really to vilify people of color. Black people, brown people, whoever, are the enemy. They're the ones that we don't want in our neighborhoods. When they had the war on drugs, they didn't have a a white middle American.
War drugs didn't happen in Beverly Hills.
That's right.
That's not where it was. It was New York City. It was Compton. It was Detroit. It was Philadelphia. It was inner D.C. You know, it wasn't Loudoun County. It wasn't Stafford County.
No, it wasn't. But where the stats take, and this was the part that angered me the most. It was, I can give you the statistics, I can give you the occurrence, I can give you the actual deaths. All those numbers fly in the face of targeting African American communities for the war on drugs and targeting for crime. But that's not what we focus on.
That's not it.
We'd rather go to stacked up urban neighborhoods, get as many of those as we can, get them through the system, and get to what she talks about, the racial caste.
And, you know, we'll bring that up a little bit later, but that's where it starts at, with that separation in the ghettos, in those neighborhoods already. You're separating people and putting them in that position to start. And then you leading them down this path, and where does this path end up?
So I know this happens in comedies and movies, but have you ever had this happen in real life where maybe you were with some white people walking neighborhood or in a college campus, and a cop comes by, they see you, maybe, but then they see you with someone white, keep on going. But have that same scenario happen, and A&T t-shirt, and it's just you and a bunch of brothers and sisters walking down the same neighborhood. You think the look will be any different?
I can tell you I've personally experienced that.
Okay.
In college, me and a group of friends of mine were walking in the mall, 5 or 6 of us, 18, 19 years old, just coming to the mall. It's a Friday. That's
right.
What you did, go to the mall. And, security came up to us and basically said we needed to separate because there were too many of us.
There were 5 or 6.
Too many of us. We had to separate. Young and defiant then, we just separated on either side of the aisle.
Right.
Wanted to kind of make a statement, and then we kind of, got over it, brushed it off, kept on moving. But you think about that in context, and I look back at it, and it's like I'm walking around, and we weren't the largest group of people walking around.
Correct. But you were
we were the ones
of African American.
We were the ones asked to separate.
Correct.
And I can tell you, my mother did a great job raising me. I like to say, I'm not the one that's going to be in the mall causing trouble. Neither my friends. I pick my friends very wisely.
Right.
So that that situation is small, obviously on a much smaller scale,
right,
but it's inducive of the system that's in place.
But what she got to in the book was that this is a way of life.
Yeah.
So when the police roll down the street and they see you, they walk towards you, you instantly put your hands up, you spread, you get ready to get frisked. And I would imagine, and never having lived that life, I would imagine the psychological damage that happens just having to go through that every day. It almost feels like you can't win. You can't escape. Yeah. So this correctional force starts early. It doesn't wait until you actually commit a crime, and that was the key point as far as the way the control happens. But specifically because we're targeting criminals, and they have the discretion to look at people of color potentially as criminals, even though they may not have a record, they may not have anything going wrong. Which was, again, I signed the book a couple
random stops. I was random stop driving a couple weeks ago.
Right.
Just driving to work.
So, and I remember this from President Obama's terms, where he addressed that we had some things in our legal system that were not colorblind, even though we say we had one. So the difference between how we deal with heroin and crack, right?
Completely different.
So we had almost double the amount of penalty for that, mandatory
minimums.
So he tried to change that. He didn't get the change where it was even, but even in the face of that, where it was clear that the way we were handling it was different, didn't make a difference.
Didn't make a difference at all. Do we have take a little quick pause here? Do we have any comments or anything we have coming up over here? All right. So what are we looking at? We've got. Definitely. It's been subconsciously drilled into our heads. I would love to see a black person that hasn't been profiled in that manner. And if that is you, if you have not been profiled, share. I mean, we'd like to see more positive. You know, we're not out here witch hunting. These are real situations that happen sometimes to people on an everyday basis.
Every day.
For me, it's happened a couple times. But I would tell you it's a couple times too many.
And I think it's most common to have the one in the mall, right? I mean, the walking around the store. I think we've all had that one at some point where they're randomly cleaning racks, you know, all through the polo section of the department store.
It's just
like that rack has been,
it's time to be clean.
It's been dusted, you know, for the last hour. I'm pretty sure it's clean, you know. But I would be surprised if there isn't someone over the age of 18 who's watching this now who hasn't been profiled. I don't know.
I don't either.
Now the severity of it is different.
Yeah.
Like I haven't been pulled over and slammed to the ground for potential looking for drugs. I haven't had my trunk. I haven't had my car searched with the drug dog. I haven't had that.
Yeah.
But each of us have had where specifically looking for a crime that
didn't take place.
I'm walking around in khakis and a button up, you know, tucked in, but I'm the criminal, right? You know, I actually have a bag in my hand like I purchased something, but I'm the one you're going to walk around the mall with.
It happens. So let's move to our next topic at hand, which you had breaking the birdcage. You want to go straight to that? Or do you want to come back to that later?
Let's come back to that.
Okay.
Because just thinking about how we're talking, I think for the ones who haven't read the book,
okay,
there was a real quick summary she gave about how we get there.
Yes.
So first she said, step one is the roundup. She said, sweep them up and lock them in the penitentiary or correctional control. And I think that's the key difference, right? So we love to run the numbers about how many black men, brown men, black women, brown women are locked in the actual penitentiary. And that's a number. That number's high. We're incarcerating at rates that are astronomical.
And it keeps growing.
It doesn't match up with any of the developed countries. There's no comparison to how many people.
We have more people in our prisons. And we have of every country, we have the highest percentage of minorities in jail in every country in the world. Mm-hmm. Highest percentage. In America, the land of the free.
That's right. And she actually pointed out states where they're putting more in jail than they are in colleges and universities. It's out of this world. So that happens first. And that's the important part. So you have to get where you have people cycling through the system. Once you have that, then you have this, what she called formal control. Yep. You either have it in the penitentiary where they're invisible, yep, they're gone, they're out of the population, or they plea bargain, they get released, and now they're in probation. They're in the system.
Still in the system.
And they're still being controlled. So, and we talked about this a little before we went live, the amount of money they have to pay, the amount of resources that are no longer available, the rights that are stripped, everything from housing to food stamps, to having to check the box. And I do want to get to that because you're in a place of actually hiring people.
I would like to talk about that.
That is an important part. But the stuff that gets stripped from them and then said, go out and take care of yourself.
You're back.
Right.
You're back.
You're rehabilitated.
Go be a contributing member to society.
Right.
Except we're going to make it very hard for you to get a job.
Right.
We're going to make it very hard for you to get a place to live. We are going to make it nearly impossible for you to vote to impact your community.
Correct.
Through legislation, which is an American right, as I was taught growing up.
That's
right.
It
was a right that we had, but
there's a right and a responsibility.
But you don't have that right.
You don't have it.
You don't have any of those rights anymore.
So here it is, the person that's been through the system, been challenged by this oppression, and they're the ones that can't vote against it. They can't vote in the senators and the House of Representatives to get these laws changed, which in turn, those people also impact how we do with our Supreme Court. So a lot of the things that she talked about were reviewed at Supreme Court level, shut down, made more oppressive, but here it is again, people who have been through that system, in that system of correctional control, have no say-so in the president, House of Representatives, the Senate, who make the difference at the Supreme Court level as well.
Even the smaller scale, if they're growing up and if they're in a neighborhood, it's not the best neighborhood. You're in a city.
Right.
It's not the best city. Guess what? You can't vote on the school board.
That's right.
You can't vote for your mayor. You can't vote for anything that has any impact, from the large scale to the Supreme Court to the tiny scale of what impact does this have on my child that's going to school. Right. You can't even do that.
Can't touch it.
Because you had...
And even the states that allow you to get your voting rights back, they make the process so complicated.
So long and expensive and time consuming.
Yeah.
It's built to... The system is built to keep you in the system.
Right. It feeds on itself. So here it is, you're discouraged, you don't have a job, you don't have a place to live, you can't feed your family, you may have kids that you can't support. So what do?
What do you do?
You go back to potentially a life of crime, or you just give up. So I think that was important to see that cycle. There's way more information in the book. We summarized that.
When we talk about extreme bullet points, we gave you a bullet point.
That's right.
Of a page.
Please do not take that as you now know what the book's about.
I don't need to read it because they just told me everything that's in the book. We are literally giving you some highlights.
Right.
This is the highlight reel, if I were to say such a thing. But the book, there's so much in the book, and we're not going to be able to cover it all. There's going to be topics that we're going to not even go into, and there's going to be topics that we're not going to pay enough attention. That's why you need to read the book.
Right.
Very important to read the book.
Please. Ms. Alexander did a great job of researching this book as well.
She did.
I think this is. I just want to get that out, so that way we can talk through about the locked cage.
So you're talking about the cage, right? And it's one of the things where, before I read the book, I myself, preconceived notions of what the system is, because I have not been in the system. I've not been arrested. I've not been jailed. I've not had my personal rights taken away. And tying it back in, where you're looking at that system, that box that you have to check, that cage that you're in. And I'll circle back around to this a little bit later, because I want to talk more specifically about the cage. When you're growing up, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, I mentioned it so that cage starts at a very young age, before you're even in the system. And that's why I say I was outside of that cage. I personally was fortunate enough where, my parents were able to grow up mainly in the suburbs when I was young. But the reality is that a vast majority of African American families, and men in particular, which is what the book talks about, are not in that position to start. So you're in a position already where you're growing up young, and maybe your father, your uncle, somebody else in your family has already been through that system, and you've done nothing wrong. You've done nothing wrong,
right.
But that system is already impacting you at a very, very, very young age. Because now, if your father can't work, can't get a job, can't pay for you, or is working those odd hours, those jobs that he is able to get, now who's home to take care of you as a child? Who's home to take care of you?
No one.
No one's home to take care of you. So if you're young and nobody's there to take care of you, you're more likely, and this is just a simple example, this isn't specific, but it's what I thought about when I read the book, you're more likely to be out with your friends. You're going to be out with your friends that are going through similar situations at a young age. If you're going to be out, you're going to be influenced by older people that have already gone through that same situation. So you could be 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And I know when I was 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, I knew 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds. And I knew 17, 18, 19-year-olds in my community that weren't, doing the right thing. And you're going to be around that environment more and more because either your dad's not there, your family's not there. So maybe your dad's not there at all because he's in jail. Maybe he's out of jail and he's working third shift because that's the only position he could get. And because that's the only position he could get, now your mom has to work more than one job. Or maybe now she's working third shift because you've got to get the money somewhere to pay the bills, to take care of you. It's so much. I could go on, and that's just a small example, but it's like when you think about it, and we're going to come back to it at the end, how do you break that cycle?
Right.
How do you break that cycle? What did you take away from it? Before I get all on that tangent.
The other part that I took from it was she talked about, because they're looking for you to mess up.
Yeah.
Right. There are times when you messed up. So let's make it personal.
Yep.
In college, and we're not revealing secrets that should be left on Pandora's box, right? No. But in college, the chances of you doing something that is against some law is high.
Yeah.
How many people were drinking before the age that they were supposed to be drinking?
Yep.
How many people not only took that drink and then got behind a wheel, right?
Yeah.
And then probably were riding with people who either shouldn't be driving or shouldn't be riding. They were drunk, so you didn't even have a designated driver. You were just less drunk. You got in fights. You may have stole something. The list goes on and on.
Right? Experimented with something.
So it's not that there's a difference between blacks doing more crime than whites doing more crime. It's just that when you put the net so tight over a black community,
the microscope is there.
The microscope is there, and you're going to catch something. Mm-hmm. If you put that same net, and this is what she pushed on, you put that same net over corporate America, the people that make six figures, and we call them, the
leaders.
Top.
They're the leaders.
They're the leaders. They're the ones doing the heroin, the cocaine, right?
The opioids, the big one.
They were doing drugs at a higher rate. But the net wasn't on them. It wasn't there to catch.
If you look for something hard enough,
you'll find it.
You're going to find it.
And then, they were catching people starting with, hey, they failed to use a signal to change lane. And then we're going to check your car, and all of a sudden we find this little thing of weed, and all of a sudden you're back in the system.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Because you didn't turn the signal light on. How many of us have made turns and I see it probably daily. People,
I do it daily.
Their signal light.
It's like if I put my signal light on, he's not gonna let me over, so I'm just gonna roll over anyway. I think that's the important part. So when we talk about this cage, part of the analogy with the cage is that if you look at a bird cage, you can see the bird inside because it's just wires and nets around them. So she used the analogy as a bird cage that the wire itself is like the laws, the processes, the regulations. Each one of those represents a little part. I mean, if you look at one individually, it doesn't seem like a big deal.
I agree with that.
I agree with that. But if you look at the entire system and who was meant to capture in that bird cage, and then she said, that door is not sitting there wide open either. It's locked up where we not only want to get you in there, but we're not going to let you out. And that's what we talked about. And when you get out, you're not just out and free and
the stigma that comes with it. And we talk about the bird cages. It's not a closed cage. It's a closed cage, but it's a visible cage at the same time.
Correct.
You can see that stigma that comes with, well, this person is a felon.
Right.
You can see that. That person comes to apply for a job. You got to check that box.
You have to check the box.
And she talked about how when children are going to school and their father has been in jail or their father is in jail, that impact that has, you don't even want to talk about it.
Right.
Because of the stigma that comes with it.
So
you're already, at a young age, you're already building your own cage.
She gave a great example. She said when election season comes up, you're at your job. Let's say the person came out and actually got a job.
Yeah.
You talked about who you're going to vote for.
Yeah.
Now I have to say,
I can't vote.
Or I abstain from the kind of, I got to lie. So there's pressure even just in regular conversation that comes up from doing these things. So it's a well-oiled machine. And the more I saw the pieces that were there, the more I saw the Supreme Court decisions that were there.
Starts from the top.
The financing, when we went to the war on drugs and they gave the money.
So much money, so willingly.
Right. And they militarized and they gave them an incentive so that if you don't take this money or if you don't do these things, these funds are not going to come to you.
And you'll see a lot of times where it ties into everything today and you're reading it. And I get it all the time, and you watch it in media. The first minute you start talking about race, and everybody's like, "Oh, here we go." People want to bring up slavery.
Make it about black and white again.
And then, but when you look at it, you look how it progresses from one system to the next.
Right. From
slavery to Jim Crow to now the penal system, which is the new Jim Crow. It's sad to say, but if we can break this system, what's the next one?
Right.
Like that thought went through my head when I finished reading the book.
Right.
So I'm jumping ahead again. I can't help it. Those thoughts come in.
No, that's the part about it, right? So, this wasn't on the list.
Yeah.
How is it that after reading something like this, after watching the news and seeing that this stuff is still unfolding, how is it that you're supposed to interact with white people and still feel like this person that's sitting across from you they see you as a human, they don't think any less of you? I felt, and this is what I'm struggling with, because I work at a job where there aren't many black people.
Yeah.
I can count on one hand the amount of middle managers or top executives that are people of color, and there are no women. I have to interact with my Caucasian peers all the time, and I'm looking at them in a different way, to be honest. Because if we can have a system that went from slavery to Jim Crow to this new racial caste system in the mass incarceration era, and again, thinking about there's just another one right behind it. There's another plan B or plan C or whatever you call it.
Already
how am I supposed to have some kind of faith and hope that the people that are sitting across from me are not either one, actively involved in this kind of system, or two, subconsciously, and even three, I don't want to absolve them of this, just don't care. Because how can you not care about when it gets
so that's a big one, and ties back to when you talked about colorblindness. And everybody loves the term colorblindness. I'm colorblind. I don't see color.
Right.
Can we all agree that that's a lie?
That is a lie. That's a lie.
Can we all agree?
Can we see color?
Can we agree that's a lie? And that for me is one of the biggest problems and it's one of the things when I was writing down my bullet points, I wrote it down multiple times under multiple sections that we plan to discuss, is acknowledgement.
Right.
It's probably the very first thing that I wrote down for each thing is acknowledgement. Right. The fact that we are afraid or just in denial to even acknowledge that there is color, and that's okay.
Right.
That's not a bad thing to acknowledge.
We should be looking at it as a positive.
That's a great thing. I see color every single day. There's a lot of beauty in color. All the different shades everywhere. Human beings, people of color, everybody.
But that's not what this system is about.
But that's not what
it's
this
exactly
system
the opposite.
It's the exact opposite, and that's why we do the colorblindness, because that's what we've been taught.
Right.
We've been taught colorblind. That way, all these things can be like you talked about. If we can make criminal synonymous with black,
right,
then we're colorblind to black.
Right.
We're on criminal.
Right.
But then we treat them one and the same.
Correct.
But if we can simply take a step back and acknowledge the fact that there is color, like that the very first step is acknowledgement. Literally, anything you ever do in life, any program you ever go to,
Right.
The very first thing is accepting and recognizing that there is a problem.
So let me throw that more gas on that fire. In the book, they talk specifically about the fact that the stats are there.
Yeah.
They're glaring. The targeting of African Americans, people of color, is there. The amount of people who are, percentage-wise, how many people are being incarcerated, how disproportionate it is there.
Yeah.
So you have the numbers, you have the data, you can see it because
black and white.
And another point, they said we can't find any good black men. Where are they? Well, they're just hiding. No black man wants to marry good black women. No, it's just we've had years and decades of locking up black men so that they don't even know how to behave in a relationship, or they're not even available because
they're locked up.
They're locked up, or in the correctional control,
or
right?
The system.
So, knowing that, they're trying to use the colorblind part. We're trying to say, look, it's a difference. We like the colorblind idea. We would love that you would not treat us differently from you. That's great, but that's not reality.
It's not reality.
Take the colorblind thing off, get your rosy glasses off, and address the situation. But we're not doing that.
And the problem is, and I recognized that in myself when I was reading the book and we were talking before we went live, is because they don't live that reality.
Right.
Because they're not in that cage. They're outside that cage. And you're outside that cage, you look at that bird and it's a spectacle.
Mm-hmm.
But then you keep moving.
Right. It's an article you read in the Wall Street Journal and you keep going.
You keep moving. So
but they don't and I guess that's a great point, because when it encroaches on their neighborhood, it becomes different.
Now it's different.
Now we have to do something about
it. Now it matters.
But when it encroaches on the neighborhood, it almost gets twisted back into the same struggle, which is those other words that we won't use on this Facebook Live are bringing the crime out of the urban areas and into the suburbs.
And it's
and it doesn't help that we have a president that has no experience in that.
In case you don't know, we're right here live in Richmond, Virginia. And if you're in Richmond, Virginia, we see this every day.
We have an avenue specifically designed for.
And even when you're talking about how it's encroaching, look at. So I can say I've been in Richmond for a while. Look at the West End.
Yeah.
As an area, just a small little snapshot. So 15 years ago, there was nothing there.
Nothing but grass.
Right, nothing there. Now everything is there, and everything gets pushed further and further away because people want to get further and further away of what they perceive as a bad area.
Right.
So let's move further and further away.
And that actually links back
property
to
value
last month's
higher
book.
and higher, and it does exactly link right back to last month's book, the cost of being African American.
And it's not that we have free copies, you know.
We do have 2 free copies left to give away. And that's one other note that I took away from the book, is how closely, while completely different topics, how closely they've mirrored each other.
Right.
And how more so how this book impacts the other. You can't even get to the financial aspect and doing things for your family. And if you haven't watched last review, it's on the page. You can view it. You can't even get to that point because you're still here.
That's right. That's right.
You're still here.
And so when someone says, "Hey, you need to do better," and we need to get together as a people, you know, that's a great story, and it works well for middle class and suburb people. It doesn't work well for someone who's trapped in this system because they're trying to make ends meet. They're trying to get this cop or probational officer off of their back. They're trying
day by day.
Day by day.
You can't even look at the long view.
And I can't remember the last time I used the word, "I'm just trying to survive."
Yeah.
I don't use that. I have plans.
Yeah.
I have goals. I want to retire early. There isn't a day where I say, "I'm just trying to make it." And so if that is my life, it's kind of hard to look at someone who's going through what the book has pointed out and have that same empathy or feelings for it and try to figure out a way in which I can help break that system. So to your point, it's not just white people that have to pay attention.
We do.
So, and I put this in my paper, and I couldn't figure out a way to really come up with how to do it. But here it is. We have even our own people who have moved away from those areas. We made it,
Yep.
right? And so what we did is we got a nice house, we got good schools for our kids, good jobs, and we separated from them. So even if we separated and went to a nice middle-class black neighborhood, we're still not in the same position where those people are.
No.
And even worse, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with getting a nice house and moving away, we didn't go back and say, hey, look, I know that school's terrible. I'm going to do something about it. Since I have the time, money, resources, I'm going to try to lobby for them to get these resources. I'm going to push for restoration of rights in my state. I'm going to do these things to try to make their life a lot better. We separated as well. So, and again, I'm taking away your talent now and fast forwarding.
It's one of the great things about a book like this, that there's so much to it, that when you sit down and have a discussion with somebody with it, inherently, there's just going to be more that maybe you didn't jot down and write about, but there's just going to be more that you want to discuss. There's going to be more questions that you're going to want to have. And that is a tribute to Michelle Alexander in this book.
She did a great job.
I want to, for the sake of time, I want to circle back to one thing we hit on earlier, and we're probably going to run out of time because we don't want to be a movie here for you guys. Probably going to run out of time and not be able to discuss a couple points. But I want to tie back to one that we spoke about earlier, and it's talking about checking that box.
Yeah.
So we talked about when you're released and you're out of prison, and maybe you're a felon and you're trying to do the right thing. You're trying to get back on your feet. So what do? You go out, you get your resume together, you go apply for a job. That's what everybody does. But there's that box you have to check that says that you are a felon. And once you check that box, it's going to go through the system and it's going to send a red flag. Now, I am in a position where I hire people. I am responsible for employing people. And when that comes through, that red box comes up and it's like, oh, what do you do now?
It's actually red.
Well, you get that notification.
Right.
You get a notification, and it's going to tell you, this person is a felon. Their background, this came through. And I can tell you, 9 times out of 10, it's just, let's just move on. Let's just go to somebody else. There's no context there. 9 times out of 10, that person doesn't even get an interview. That person doesn't even get an opportunity for a job to even to make that step forward. And it won't tell you. You won't even know.
Right.
Like what it was initially. It will go through on the back end if you do decide to bring that person in and you do decide to offer that person employment. When that second background check comes in, it will then tell you exactly what it was. So in the beginning, you don't even know what it was. And I will tell you guys, and it's a crazy thing, the word felon is so misconstrued. The difference between a felon and somebody that's committed a misdemeanor is time. The only thing that dictates somebody as a felon is 12 months or more in the penal system. That's it. Less than 12 months is a misdemeanor. Somebody can be in jail for 11 months, convicted of a misdemeanor, and do 10, 11 months. Somebody else can be convicted of a felony and do 12.
And the things that are on the list for that 12 months is...
Google it.
Right.
Look these things up, and you will be very surprised at what you can be convicted of, be placed into this system,
and be labeled a felon.
And never get out. So it makes me think, going forward, will I look at that differently the next time that alert comes up? And I can tell you that book tells me yes. That book tells me yes. Will that lead to more employment for felons at my place of employment? I don't know. I don't know.
So now, we should get to the point about what can we do best. And I actually have some things to ask you. I didn't give you a heads up on this one, so
that's okay.
It's going to be rapid fire. But I did do a Google search, and there are a few websites that specifically list employers, and it does it by state. that list employers that hire felons. The actual website is called We Hire Felons or something to that effect. I don't want to butcher the name. We'll put it in the link. But there's actually a site that lists, and there's some big name companies in there, and they have positions open.
Yep.
I don't know how accurate the website is. It could be something that...
But it's a place to start.
It's a place to start. So there are people who are doing the work. And that's the other thing that, after I got off my angry mode, I did get some encouragement that there are people out there trying to help. And because we are in Virginia, I'm going to put this example out. Terry McAuliffe, our governor, did grant restoration of rights for, I want to say it was thousands.
It was a lot.
Thousands
when it came through, there were a lot of unhappy people.
That's right.
A lot of unhappy people.
The process of getting your rights restored is ridiculous. It's long, it's arduous, it costs money, it's a lot of time. But he actually went in with the help and aid and assistance of a lot of other people and organizations and restored a lot of rights. So, I think it's good, it's appropriate we get to this point.
Let's get to it.
All right, so none of these are going to be easy.
Okay.
So these are all breaking the wheel ideas I thought about that we could do. She pushed on a lot of them. And so I want to ask you the question.
Okay.
What can we target for change if these are ones that we can? And you may have some ones that I didn't list. And how can we as private citizens do anything to help with these? So I'm going to give you some specific examples.
Specific ones.
And then if you have some more, you jump in. One was, and I thought this one was more appropriate for you, is the punitive employment practice.
So the first thing that comes with it is you have to mentally remove the stigma, and that is something that the employer.
Okay.
So the employer has to mentally remove the stigma with the word felon, like the word felon, the stigma that goes with it, and the how is the hardest part.
So your thinking is not change the law that they have to put that on there, but change the employer's mindset.
I wrote that in my notes.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to pull it up and I'm going to read it.
All right.
The very first thing I wrote down with that is, let me find it now. Well, I can't find it, but what I thought about was, why is the box there? That was the first thing that came up.
Right.
Is why is the box there? So when you talk about removing the box, which is the first thought that came in, removing the box requires voting legislation, and the people that are impacted by it can't vote.
Right.
And it's designed that way because it's designed to pit me against you. If I am not a felon and I want to get a job, why would I want increased competition for that job?
Mm-hmm.
Why would I want more people to be able to apply for the job? I want less people to be able to apply for that job because I want to get it.
And even more diabolical, if I want to keep this system going, I have to make it where they can't financially empower themselves.
They have to stay there.
They'll rely back to.
So that is, and the problem a lot with the new Jim Crow, not the book, but the system, is just how daunting the tasks are.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talked about changing the mindset, the reason I feel that is more practical, because through a lot of HR and a lot of programs, these employers, and a lot of them are going to be large companies, can have programs, they can have on-the-job training for these HR representatives for what we are targeting and what to look at, because they have it for what we're looking at in a resume. We have the training for how are we going to interview. We have the training for how we're going to onboard these people and what are the benefits that we're going to offer. What is the continuous coaching and everything we're going to have. We have all of this is in place, which is why I feel like it's easier to input a program to teach you to not have not just that single word, but to have remove that stigma with felons and their ability to do the job that you're looking to hire for.
Can I throw something in there?
Throw it in.
There may be a monkey wrench. In the jobs that I've hired people for, my HR manager filtered them. So they work through some kind of entry for resumes. And he set the filter, don't give me any felons. So here it is. I'm hiring manager.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's going to manage this person when they come to the company, but I have no say so.
Yeah.
The hiring manager has already filtered. They're the gatekeeper.
And
now I'm not. That may have to change within the organization.
Not necessarily. I think that's a perfect example of what it is I'm talking about. HR has that control.
Right.
So and when I bring that up, and what I mean by it is there can be, and I don't know, I haven't researched this part of it because there's so many aspects of things to look at within this book. But I've worked for organizations where you'll bring in outside organizations. People will bring in a wellness coach.
Right.
You know, they'll bring in. You can name 100 different leadership. You're going on, team building exercises.
Right.
These things happen all the time. Organizations bring these things in. So if you really want to change that, and it can start within your own organization that you are currently working for. If you don't have a voice, make one.
Right.
You can ask for that change. You can have that interaction with your HR department. You can have that interaction with people that are in a position to change it. You can have that interaction to bring that coaching and bring that training in. And maybe potentially when those things do happen, then maybe that system is you're no longer able to filter it.
Now, the change agent is even easier if you're a business owner.
You are.
So you can hire who you want. You can make the changes to the filter.
You can do whatever you want to do.
So let me give you another one. This one we talked about quite a bit was the restoration of voting rights and simplifying that process.
So when I went through, and that was, I know for a fact.
Can't find it, but it's in there.
I just looked at that one. The very first one is restoring voting rights for felons. The first things to look at is, and that starts with the people that currently are voting. If you currently vote, you are the person that can change this.
Right.
Like, it starts on you. You can change this, and I can tell you the numbers prove it's there. Vast majority of us know people that can't vote.
Right.
You know people in your community that can't vote. And at the same time, there's a lot of anger within your community with how things are going from your school system, which is one that I hope we get time to hit on. I don't know if we're going to be able to. So you have that. It's already there. We just need to bring it to the forefront. And I know she was talking about, it's actually one of the things she talked about in the very beginning of the book, where she was talking about all these things back in the Jim Crow era, where all these organizations and we're talking about all the problems and things they wanted to fix and change, and this wasn't even one that was on their radar.
Right.
We have to put it on the radar.
Right.
And that starts...
and ahead of some things that may be personally...
Correct. Because you have to have the vision to see the long-term impact. And a lot of what the change needs to take place, voting is perhaps the biggest part of it.
Right.
And if these people do not have that ability to vote, and the vast majority of these people are in inner city areas where the school systems are terrible,
right,
and they can't vote to fix them, the housing is terrible, the roads are terrible, the crime rate is terrible, police brutality is terrible, and you can't even change it, how do you expect things to get better?
Right.
So that was one of the things that was not, and I can tell you I was one of those people who was not even on my radar.
That's right. Same
before I opened this book, was not even on my radar.
I knew we were being incarcerated.
But the rate, the number, the sheer volume.
And then also the fact, it's not just to pull your bootstraps and do better, right?
Do better.
Be a better man. Come on.
This is not designed to do better.
That's not the way it's set up to work. And how much time we got?
We've got time. We're coming up on an hour. We may run a little bit over.
All right.
We'll try not to keep you too long.
Let's go with this one here. And this one I didn't fully understand either. So this was something else eye-opening. But the punitive social services piece of it. where you come out, you're no longer eligible
for any of these things.
For any of the things that, if you are struggling with finding employment because you have to check the box, let's say you're honest about it, you check the box. You may not have a great job, you may have children. There are things that you are automatically ineligible for, and that's kind of sad.
And I mean, that's by design. And that's another thing I did not know as well. But that's by design. It's designed to keep it so you don't have access to this, so that you're right back in the system. It's designed that way. It makes no sense at all. I mean, just think about this. Think about the system as a whole. So you get convicted of a crime.
Right.
And we're not going to go into the circumstances or whatever the crime may be. You get convicted of a crime, and you go to jail, and you're going to jail to be rehabilitated. So you can come out.
That's myth number one.
And have a positive impact, like I mentioned multiple times, in your community and your country. So you come out, and they tell you, all right, you have to come out, you have to get a job. But guess what? Before you even get a job, you have to have somewhere to live.
That's right.
You have to have somewhere to live. And my belief coming into it was that a lot of these social services were there to help people that are kind of in this situation have a home to live. And then the next thing is to get a job, which you already covered, that you're not able to get because you have to check that box. And it is a revolving wheel. So all of these programs and all of these things were voted on.
That's right.
All of these things were voted on to do it, and I've seen it before. We're going to drug test people before we allow them to get food stamps.
That's right.
That's just the next thing.
Because people are frauding the system at such a high rate.
At such a high rate.
That's right. And every time they do the research, the numbers, back to the numbers again. Every time you do research, it's like 5 people out of thousands.
The worst part is it's not black people.
No.
The worst part is the numbers say it's not black people. The numbers say there's not more black people or wealth or even the percentages. It's not. It's not us that are there, but we're the ones that they are making the laws for. And we talked about what is the next Jim Crow,
right.
The next slavery, the next caste system. And maybe the drug testing, now that we didn't really dive into, a lot of the states are legalizing things like marijuana.
Right.
But the drug testing is probably like, and it happens at my job, just because it's legal.
Doesn't mean it's legal at my job.
Doesn't mean it's legal at my job. Doesn't mean it's going to be legal to get the welfare, to get these food stamps. And it makes me think, and literally I just thought now, is that a step to the next system? Is, okay, we have the new Jim Crow here now, but we need to prepare for the next one.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to throw you this bone, and we're going to loosen up the laws on marijuana specifically. So now you're going to get out. You're not going to have as many people in jail. We did that for you. So now everybody's going to be able to work, and if you're below the poverty line, you're going to be able to have access to food stamps and low income housing. You're going to have access to it. Oh, but we told you this was legal, and you did it.
Right.
And now you don't qualify.
Now you can't get a job.
So now you're out of one system.
Right. And into another.
And you're into another one.
Which, even if they flip that switch tomorrow, there's still so many people stuck in the system. Current system that it would take decades to get everyone funneled out of that one.
And they're already creating a new one. Potentially.
I think it's, there's a responsibility for us as a community. And I think we got to stop comparing ourselves to other communities.
Yeah.
Because, let's be real, there's circumstances that are being pushed on us in this country that are unlike any other community.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to think of it in different ways. We can't say, well, it's not fair, it's not equal. It's not. And so we need to fight it in a different way. Yeah. So we have to fight it at the law level. We have to fight it at the judicial level. We have to fight it with our representatives.
Yeah.
we have to get these rights restored. And I thought, out of all of this, the thing that we could fight the most for, and I'm not talking about success, I'm just, the thing we need to fight for is our voting rights.
Yep.
Because that will allow us to change some of the laws that feed people into the system and possibly start breaking this wheel.
But you can't do it without the voting.
Right.
And I challenge every single one of you, if you don't vote, vote.
Right.
If you saw our last video, it's the same thing. Vote.
You gotta vote.
So much of this is put in place, and it's done in plain sight because we have chosen, or we have not chosen people to represent the interests for our own communities. And that's how these things happen, and it's not going to change overnight because it was years and years. You start with one, you start towing yourself in the water of what can we pass?
Right.
Get that passed, get more people on board, what can we do next? And then it talks about in the book, and then people start running on the fact that they're able to pass these laws.
Right.
So now I'm running on that. I'm running on, war on drugs. I'm running on that platform. I'm running on tough on crime. I'm running on that,
right.
And those things are designed.
Even Democrats.
Democrats.
They talk about Bill Clinton.
Yeah, it's not a.
He had to show that he was tough on crime to pull
in those votes. And we need to change that. And I agree. A lot of times I sit back and I think things start first from the educational standpoint, but I think that is one that we can't impact that yet until we get the voting rights to put the people in the positions to have that impact.
Well, we still need to be educated.
Correct.
To the point where we can understand and know what these laws and the impacts are. But as far as fixing the education system,
correct.
We do need to.
Correct.
Right.
Yes, education matters.
I didn't want that to be what we put out on.
As far as breaking the wheel,
right.
The voting rights are what's going to get that process started.
That's right. Yeah. So when we don't vote, the ones who can, we're actually not just losing our vote, we're losing the ones who don't have the voting rights. So we have to look at our voting power as a bigger responsibility than just the one.
Your vote's not just your vote. Your vote is the vote for the people that can't vote. And the only way that they can get a voice to vote is if you do.
Right. Yes. And talk about unfair, just to wrap that voting part up. I would actually, and this is just a thought, we need to vote not for our personal interests. So there's, in the Bible they talk about doing for the least of us, right? I'm not trying to make a biblical discussion, but the fact that we can vote, we have tax dollars going in, we have some say in the representation, we need to vote not just for our personal interests, but for the ones who...
And that's, and I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole, because I personally believe that's a big problem with voting now, is everybody just thinks about themselves.
That's right. I want my taxes to be lower.
Yeah.
What blows my mind, this is the angry part we need to go. The angry part is we can have an African American or Mexican or someone else who's being disenfranchised by the Republican Party or some other party and vote for them just because they can get either taxes done or capital punishment or whatever they want.
We've seen
giving away their entire community's needs and requirements by just placing a vote with someone who doesn't represent them.
Prime example, and I'm not going to dive in. A lot of people.
We got to do the Facebook Live just for the.
You have those people, and it's just so true. I've read the stories of the people, in the news where they voted. They voted for Donald Trump, and they were.
How do you feel now?
They were minorities or they were immigrants, and then their family members were deported. Right. they literally voted against they voted, and it had their vote had the biggest negative impact on themselves, and that's what we do sometimes when we do vote. We vote against ourselves because we don't even know what we're voting for.
That's right.
So that's the second part of that, is to kind of bring it full circle, is you have to vote
Right.
You need to vote.
You got to be educated.
But you need to know what you're voting for.
Right.
And what the person you're putting into office stands for. And then you have to, the very last part is you have to hold them to that.
Right. That was the beauty of the analogy of the wires for the birdcage, is that they can talk about specific things, but just like what Trump's done, I mean, with all the presidential, I'm trying to think of the word, executive orders.
Yeah, executive orders.
All executive orders that he's done it, and it's almost contrary to some of the stuff he's put on.
Yep.
So, before we get going,
I want to hit and see if we have any other comments I want to address. And then we need to highlight what the book next month is going to be. All right. Yep, we definitely live in a society where people are just out for themselves. In case you didn't know, elections are coming up. Second week of June if you're local to Henrico and Richmond. So second week of June coming up. Less than a month, multiple weeks. We definitely talked about mental rehabilitation. Thank you. And good point. You cannot fix what you don't know. So more awareness. It is very much under the radar. I like to think of myself as somebody that's educated, that is in tune. And there's so much in this book. Probably, if I'd put a percentage up on it, I'd probably say upwards of 70% of this book that I was just ignorant of. Right. Just ignorant of. Yes, definitely. Yeah. So thank you for watching, and we want to go into next month's book. Next month's book for June.
Say, what's his name?
Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Ta-Nehisi Coates.
I think it's Ta-Nehisi, but we'll let you slide on that.
All right.
Between the World and Me, as you can see, it's not a big book. Very powerful, award-winning. The author actually, I think, is working on the Black Panther
on the movie
and comic book series. So he is.
I didn't know the comic book.
Yeah, he's on Twitter.
Nice.
We put his Twitter handle on. Please follow him. Tell him that you're reading his book. If you have any feedback on the book, you want to give us some accolades. I think this is going to be a powerful book, and I'm hoping that we get a lot of people reading the book this month. Any final thoughts before we go? We
will be doing this the last week of every single month.
Yeah.
We will be posting it usually mid-month. Make yourself available. View it. If you are here in the Richmond, Virginia area, join us. I mean, it's an open discussion.
That's right.
The more people we have involved, the better it's going to be. And I know there are more people that have read the book than the two of us that are here. I have people that I work with, that I come into work every day, and I thank you guys, and we discuss the book. And for those that don't know, there's not all black men. A vast number of white men and women have been reading the book. They've been commenting on the page. We've been having discussions. So we mentioned this earlier. Just because the title of the group is Black Men Read,
this book was actually picked by a white man and a black woman.
That's who picked the book. So shout out to Charles and shout out to Jessica. Thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to read and review this book next month. I look forward to having you guys with us next month. That's all I have. What you got? Any
just final thought. I mean, this is just like last month's book. The problem is so big that it's not a one law wonder. It's not going to be fixed by one representative. It's going to take a dual effort. One, it's going to take us stopping the flow into the system.
Yep.
So we got to work on digging into our community, helping the people who are less fortunate than us, people who are trapped in this kind of correctional control. The other part is for the folks who are in the system or coming out of it or still under that correctional control, as the author put, we need to be helping them. We need to look for ways in which we can help them with their rights, help them with support. They need us more than ever because the system is getting tighter and tighter on the control because it needs to feed on itself. So we need to be there for them. And I'm saying we, I'm saying him, I'm saying everyone else. We need to be actively involved. You so your vote counts, your work counts, your dollar counts, spend it in the community, support black businesses, support everywhere you can to help with these communities. So I think with that said, we're thankful for all that's watching this and who are watching on replay. Please drop us some comments, like the page, And if you have anything that you want to add to the book club, if you want to suggest a book for the next month, we have some ideas for the summer, but we're definitely open and welcome to any comments you have for going forward. So thank you, Lance, for joining us.
Thank you.
Look forward to doing it next month and hopefully having more in the crowd. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Yeah. Where's the...